Security. Remove this child immediately. Dr. Harrison's sharp tone cut through the quiet of Chicago Memorial Hospital's main hall, his finger jabbing towards the 10-year-old boy standing frozen by the entrance. Jerome Williams halted, his scuffed sneakers a stark contrast to the polished marble floor. 12 city blocks in a biting November rain had brought him here, but it wasn't the chill that made his hand tremble. It was the weight of a personal vow. With all due respect, sir, Jerome's voice, remarkably steady, surprised everyone present. I simply wish to offer assistance to the young lady in the wheelchair. I believe I can help her walk again. Dr. Harrison, chief of pediatric neurology and the inheritor of a 4-generation medical legacy, regarded the boy with disdain, as if he were a smudge on his pristine lab coat. Did you not hear me? I've summoned security. Children from the streets do not barge in here dictating to physicians. At 45, Dr. Harrison had cultivated a practice exclusively serving Chicago's affluent families. His forte was delivering precisely what wealthy parents desired to hear, even in the direst of circumstances, particularly concerning the daughter of Dr. Michael Foster, the hospital's chief surgeon and its most significant benefactor. That girl has been in physical rehabilitation for 3 years without taking a single step. Jerome continued, undeterred by the approaching security guards. But I can help. My grandmother instructed me. Just then, Dr. Foster appeared, guiding his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, in her wheelchair. Emma, born with cerebral palsy, observed the scene with wide, intelligent eyes. Upon seeing Jerome, an unexpected transformation occurred. A smile graced her lips, and she extended her small arms towards him. Emma, no, Doctor, Foster admonished gently, pulling the chair back. Let's proceed to your session. But Emma, pointing at Jerome, uttered her first coherent word in 2 years. Friend? The ensuing silence was profound. Dr. Harrison bristled at Emma's reaction. In the 3 years he had overseen her care, she had displayed no prior interest in anyone or any form of treatment. Jerome knelt beside the wheelchair, meeting Emma's gaze. Hello, princess. Would you like to learn how to dance? Enough, Dr. Harrison bellowed. Security, escort this child out this instant. He then pointed directly at Jerome. If you dare show your face here again, I will involve the police. Jerome rose slowly, but before being led away, he murmured a phrase that sent a chill down Dr. Harrison's spine. Doctor, I know precisely why Emma has not improved, and I suspect you do as well. As the security personnel guided him toward the exit, Jerome's eyes remained locked on Dr. Harrison, conveying a depth of understanding far beyond his 10 years, an ancient wisdom, an unwavering resolve, and a disquieting certainty of knowledge too potent for the wrong moment. If you are finding this narrative of resilience and determination compelling, please consider subscribing to the channel to discover how a moment of profound humiliation ignited a movement that would irrevocably alter the lives within that very hospital. 3 days had elapsed since Jerome's expulsion from Memorial Hospital, yet Dr. Harrison remained haunted by Jerome's parting words. I know precisely why Emma has not improved, and I suspect you do as well. What could that child possibly have meant? Harrison attempted to dismiss it as the ramblings of a troubled youth, but the boy's resolute gaze gnawed at him. On Thursday morning, he arrived at the hospital to find Jerome seated on the steps of the main entrance, as if awaiting him. The boy made no attempt to enter, merely observing the ebb and flow of individuals through the glass doors with an unnerving maturity. Haven't you contacted the authorities yet? Harrison inquired sharply of the guard at the front desk. He's not causing any disturbances, doctor. He's simply seated there. Technically, the sidewalk is public property. Harrison felt a surge of irritation. This child was clearly attempting to provoke him, and he was succeeding. Later that morning, during Emma's physical therapy session, an unusual event transpired. The girl, typically listless and disengaged, repeatedly glanced toward the window. Following her gaze, Dr. Harrison saw Jerome outside, peering in. Emma began to stir restlessly in her chair, attempting to communicate through gestures. An unprecedented display of urgency or desire in months. What's happening with her today? Doctor Foster inquired, noting the shift in his daughter's demeanor. Merely a phase, Harrison replied curtly, drawing the curtains. Perhaps we should adjust her medication. However, Emma's agitation did not subside. Instead, she began to weep, genuine tears of frustration that Harrison hadn't witnessed in years. It was as if she were desperately trying to convey a message that remained incomprehensible to all. That afternoon, Harrison discovered Jerome engaged in conversation with Janet, one of the hospital's veteran nurses, in the parking lot. The sight incensed him. "Janet, you were instructed not to interact with this child." "I apologize, doctor." Harrison, but he was discussing techniques his grandmother employed with children with special needs. "It's quite fascinating, actually." "Fascinating?" Harrison practically shouted. "He's an uneducated street urchin." Jerome turned calmly to Harrison. "Doctor, my grandmother was Lily Williams. She dedicated 30 years of her life to this hospital's pediatric neurology department. You might recall her." Harrison's blood ran cold. He remembered Lily Williams vividly, one of the most esteemed nurses ever to grace the institution, renowned for achieving extraordinary outcomes with cases deemed insurmountable. She had retired 15 years prior and had recently passed away. That's impossible," Harrison stammered. "She raised me after my parents perished." Jerome continued, his voice retaining its unsettling composure. "She imparted everything she knew about how children's minds function, how to connect with them when adults have surrendered. She taught me particularly about cases like Emma's." Janet shifted her gaze between the two men, sensing the palpable tension. "Dr. Harrison, if he is indeed Lily's grandson—" "Enough!" Harrison boomed. "I couldn't care less who he claims to be. Children do not treat patients in this hospital." Jerome took a step forward, and for the first time, Harrison perceived an emotion other than calm in those eyes. He saw a steely determination that compelled him to recoil involuntarily. "Dr. Harrison, I am aware that you are withholding information from Dr. Foster regarding Emma's progress. I know you are fully cognizant of her true condition, yet you conceal it to avoid admitting a diagnostic error you made 3 years ago." The world seemed to halt for Harrison. How could this child possibly be aware of the misdiagnosis he had concealed for years? "You know nothing," Harrison whispered, his voice betraying his composure. "I know Emma does not have severe cerebral palsy, as you informed her father." Jerome continued without wavering. "I know she suffers from a treatable condition that you misdiagnosed, and now you fear the repercussions to your reputation if the truth emerges." Cold sweat beaded on Harrison's brow. That misdiagnosis had plagued his nights for years. He had been young, arrogant, desperate to impress Dr. Foster with his perceived expertise. By the time he recognized his error, it was too late. Acknowledging it would necessitate admitting his incompetence and potentially facing a medical malpractice lawsuit. "How do you—" Harrison began, but Jerome was not finished. "And I know how to help her. My grandmother taught me precisely how to manage cases like hers, but you'd rather let an innocent child endure suffering than admit you were wrong." Janet watched the unfolding scene in stunned silence. She had never witnessed Dr. Harrison so visibly shaken and out of control. "If you do not leave this instant, I will contact the police," Harrison threatened, though his voice lacked its former authority. Jerome offered a smile that seemed incongruous on a 10-year-old, a smile laden with the burden of painful wisdom and an unshakable resolve. "You may call them, doctor, but I will be here every day, reminding you that there is a young girl who could be running and playing if only you possess the courage to do what is right." As Jerome calmly departed, Harrison remained rooted to the spot, his meticulously constructed world beginning to fracture. This child knew far too much. Secrets capable of dismantling his career. What Dr. Harrison failed to grasp was that Jerome's presence was not coincidental. His knowledge of Emma's condition was merely the visible tip of an immense truth about to surface from the frigid waters of deception, carrying revelations that would forever transform the hospital. Dr. Harrison resolved to definitively address this disruption. The following morning, he convened an impromptu meeting with the entire pediatric neurology team. "Colleagues," he announced, adjusting his spectacles and adopting an air of authoritative gravitas, "we face a delicate situation. An unattended child has been disrupting our established routines and has even attempted to interfere with patient care. We must take decisive action." "Doctor." Rebecca Chun, a neurologist recently relocated from Boston, voiced a question with a slight frown. What sort of interference are we discussing? The boy purports to possess medical knowledge, allegedly inherited from a supposed grandmother who formerly worked here. It is patently a case of childish fantasy, yet it is causing considerable disruption. Janet, the nurse who had conversed with Jerome, cleared her throat, a hint of discomfort in her demeanor. Dr. Harrison, I have reviewed the personnel records. Lily Williams did indeed serve here for 30 years, and she had a grandson who was recently orphaned. An awkward silence descended upon the room. Harrison felt a bead of perspiration forming on his brow. That does not alter the fact that a child cannot— Excuse me, Dr. Chen. Dr. Chun interrupted. May I inquire about the specific nature of the knowledge this child has displayed? Harrison hesitated, unwilling to confess that Jerome had identified his misdiagnosis, thereby exposing himself completely. Unscientific methodologies, unsubstantiated theories. I would like to speak with him, Doctor, Chun stated firmly. If he is indeed Lily Williams's grandson, that changes our perspective entirely. She was a legend here. That afternoon, Jerome occupied his customary position on the steps when Dr. Chun approached him. In contrast to Harrison's confrontational approach, she sat beside him, treating him with a notable degree of respect. You must be Jerome. I am Dr. Chen. I have heard a great deal about your grandmother. Jerome studied her intently. Did you work with her? Not directly, but her reputation was well known. She helped many children whom other doctors had given up on. She taught me that sometimes physicians become so engrossed in their textbooks that they neglect to observe the actual child. Jerome responded, his maturity once again surprising an adult. Dr. Chun smiled. Your grandmother was a wise woman. Tell me about Emma Foster. Jerome met her gaze directly. Do you genuinely wish to know, or are you assessing my knowledge? The forthrightness of his question momentarily caught Dr. Chin off guard. I genuinely wish to know. Emma does not have severe cerebral palsy, as her medical chart indicates. She suffers from a neuromotor disconnection syndrome that is amenable to specific therapeutic stimulation. My grandmother taught me to recognize the symptoms. Dr. Chun felt an unnerving chill. If Jerome was correct, it implied that Emma had undergone 3 years of ineffective treatment. How can you be so certain? Because I observed the identical symptoms in my cousin before my grandmother intervened to assist her, and because I have been observing Emma for weeks through that window. She responds to stimuli that a child with severe cerebral palsy would not. At that precise moment, Dr. Harrison emerged from the hospital entrance and witnessed the two conversing. His expression contorted into one of unadulterated fury. Dr. Chun, what are you doing? Engaging in conversation with a remarkably insightful young man, she replied, rising to her feet. Jerome, allow me to introduce Dr. Foster. I believe he ought to hear your observations regarding Emma. Harrison's blood ran cold. If Jerome shared his insights about the misdiagnosis with Dr. Foster, his career would be irrevocably ruined. This is utterly unacceptable, Harrison declared heatedly. Dr. Chun, you are permitting a street child to question our established medical protocols. A child who demonstrates exceptional medical acumen, inherited from one of the most brilliant professionals this hospital has ever known, Dr. Chun retorted with unwavering conviction. Jerome rose slowly, observing the palpable tension between the two physicians. There was something in Harrison's strained demeanor that validated his suspicions. Dr. Harrison, Jerome stated with that unsettlingly calm demeanor, you are apprehensive about what I am about to convey to Dr. Foster, are you not? I am not apprehensive about anything a child might say. Then permit me to demonstrate what I understand about Emma. If I am mistaken, you may banish me from this place permanently. Dr. Chun glanced between Jerome and Harrison, sensing a tension that transcended a mere disagreement over protocol. Harrison, what is the issue? If the boy is incorrect, it will only serve to validate our current methods. Harrison found himself in a precarious position. Refusing now would undoubtedly arouse suspicion, yet agreeing risked exposing his catastrophic error. Very well, he conceded, striving to maintain a steady tone. But once this charade is revealed, I expect appropriate action to be taken. Jerome smiled, a smile uncharacteristic of a 10-year-old. Excellent, Doctor. Harrison. I anticipate you will be quite astonished by our findings." As they proceeded toward the hospital, Dr. Chen whispered to Jerome, "Are you certain you know what you are doing?" "My grandmother always maintained that the truth possesses an inherent ability to reveal itself," Jerome replied, "and that when individuals endeavor to conceal it for extended periods, it inevitably finds a way to surface." What Dr. Harrison remained unaware of was that Jerome had spent the preceding 2 weeks diligently gathering more than just visual observations of Emma through the window. He had engaged in conversations with long-serving nurses, discreetly reviewed patient progress reports, and most importantly, meticulously documented every inconsistency in Emma's treatment. His notebook, concealed within a worn backpack, contained information that would not only substantiate his diagnosis, but also expose the full extent of the deception Harrison had maintained for years. As they entered the hospital, Jerome lightly touched his backpack. His grandmother had instilled in him the belief that justice sometimes necessitated patience. But when the opportune moment arrived, it was as relentless as a storm, finally unleashing its fury. It was as everyone proceeded towards Emma's room that Jerome noticed something that elicited an inner smile. Dr. Harrison was visibly sweating, compulsively checking his watch, and performing that nervous gesture of adjusting his glasses, a telltale sign his grandmother had taught him to recognize in physicians on the verge of exposure. The truth was imminent, and Harrison remained utterly oblivious to the impending tempest that would obliterate his carefully constructed edifice of lies and false prestige. Upon entering the physical therapy room where Emma awaited, Jerome discreetly retrieved his tattered notebook from his backpack. Dr. Harrison had no inkling that those handwritten pages contained 3 weeks of meticulous observations that were poised to dismantle a 15-year career built on falsehoods. "Dr. Foster?" Jerome addressed him, approaching the wheelchair where Emma's face lit up with recognition. "May I demonstrate something regarding your daughter?" Dr. Foster, a man of gravitas who had devoted the preceding years to seeking a cure for his daughter, nodded. "Certainly, but be brief." Jerome knelt to Emma's eye level and commenced a series of elementary movements, lightly touching specific points on her legs and feet. To the astonishment of all present, Emma reacted instantaneously, flexing her fingers and even attempting to bend her knees. "That's impossible," Dr. Harrison muttered, perspiration now visibly forming on his forehead. "Emma has severe cerebral palsy. These reactions are merely involuntary spasms." "Dr. Harrison," Jerome stated, turning with that characteristic unnerving calm, "Emma does not have severe cerebral palsy. She is afflicted with neuromotor disconnection syndrome, a completely distinct and treatable condition." Dr. Chun observed Emma's responses with profound fascination. "Jerome, how can you be so absolutely certain?" Jerome opened his notebook and began to read. November 1st. Emma responded to tactile stimuli on her lower extremities. Day 5. Demonstrated conscious control of facial muscles when prompted. Day 10. Attempted to vocalize specific words when appropriately stimulated. Dr. Foster's complexion paled. "You have been observing my daughter without my consent." "From the public sidewalk, sir," Jerome corrected, "and what I observed were clear indicators that her diagnosis has been erroneous for 3 years. Dr. Harrison felt the foundation of his world crumble. "That is preposterous. A 10-year-old child questioning a certified medical diagnosis." Jerome stood and looked directly at Harrison. "Dr. Harrison, shall I inform Dr. Foster about the MRI scans that were misinterpreted in 2020? Or how you suppressed the results of neurological tests that contradicted your initial assessment?" The silence in the room was absolute. Dr. Foster slowly turned his gaze towards Harrison. "What is he referring to?" Harrison was visibly trembling. "Michael, do not heed this child. He is fabricating these claims." "My grandmother preserved copies of all critical examinations," Jerome continued relentlessly. "She was working on Emma's file when her results were processed. She showed me how to identify the indicators you chose to disregard." Jerome turned a page in his notebook and read aloud. "MRI report, March 15th, 2020. Fundamentally normal brain structures. Findings consistent with mild to moderate neuromotor disconnection syndrome. Prognosis favorable with appropriate stimulation." Dr. Foster snatched the notebook from Jerome's grasp. His eyes rapidly scanned the meticulous notations, each observation precisely dated and elaborately detailed. Harrison, is this accurate? Dr. Harrison found himself cornered, acutely aware of it. Michael, at the time, there was uncertainty regarding the diagnosis. Uncertainty? Dr. Foster erupted. You informed me my daughter would never walk, that I should accept her lifelong dependency. I was exercising caution. Caution? Dr. Chun, clutching the notebook, examined the entries. Jerome, these observations are remarkably precise. You have documented neurological response patterns that clearly indicate preserved motor function. Jerome approached Emma once more. Princess, would you care to attempt to stand? With his assistance, Emma managed to support her weight on her legs for a few fleeting seconds. It was not the steady gait that proper treatment would eventually provide, but it was a conscious, controlled movement. Dr. Foster's eyes welled with tears. 3 years, Harrison. 3 years of my daughter's life that could have been entirely different. Michael, please allow me to explain. Explain? Dr. Foster's fury was now palpable. You deceived me. You lied to Emma. You stole years of her development for what? Your vanity? Your fear of admitting a mistake? Jerome calmly closed his notebook. Doctor Foster, with the correct therapeutic intervention, Emma can lead a life entirely free of limitations, perhaps with some residual challenges, but she will be capable of walking, running, and playing like any other child. Dr. Chun appeared visibly moved. Jerome, would you be willing to assist me in formulating an appropriate treatment regimen for Emma? It would be my distinct honor, Doctor. Dr. Harrison made one final, desperate appeal. You cannot place credence in a child who lives on the streets. Where are his credentials, his medical training? Jerome turned to him one last time. Dr. Harrison, my grandmother always asserted that true knowledge is not derived from diplomas adorning walls, but from genuine compassion for patients, a quality you have clearly forsaken. Doctor Foster cradled Emma in his lap, observing her positive responses to Jerome's gentle stimuli. Harrison, you are terminated, and I assure you, the medical board will be fully apprised of every detail that transpired here. Harrison stumbled out of the room, his career annihilated not by a professional rival or a formal inquiry, but by a 10-year-old boy who held more concern for a child's well-being than he had ever demonstrated for his own reputation. As Jerome patiently worked with Emma, demonstrating the techniques his grandmother had imparted to Dr. Chun, a new reality began to take shape within the hospital's confines. In a world where authentic healing stemmed not from academic accolades but from profound empathy, a hidden truth remained. Jerome possessed a final revelation concerning his grandmother, a secret poised to reshape Emma's existence, and the destiny of countless youngsters who would later seek solace at this very institution. 6 months after that pivotal day, Chicago Memorial Hospital had undergone a complete metamorphosis. Jerome Williams, now officially embraced by the Foster family, had ascended to the position of the youngest consultant in the facility's annals. He collaborated closely with Dr. Chun, spearheading the newly established division dedicated to groundbreaking pediatric neural rehabilitation. Emma, with her confident stride now resounding through the hospital's halls, replaced the former quietude of rolling wheelchairs. At 8 years of age, she not only walked but also danced, leaped, and reveled in childhood exuberance, a testament to her remarkable recovery. More significantly, she had become a champion for an initiative that had already extended its reach to numerous children facing similar misdiagnoses. Jerome! Jerome! Emma's cheerful cry preceded her as she hurried towards her adoptive sibling, who was engrossed in reviewing patient charts within the newly designated Lily Williams Center for Neurorehabilitation. Dr. Chun announced, "We are assisting 3 more youngsters today." Jerome offered a warm smile, observing the girl who had been the genesis of a medical paradigm shift. Princess, he inquired, are you prepared to demonstrate that extraordinary outcomes are indeed possible when genuine affection is present? Dr. Foster observed the heartwarming tableau from the corridor, his heart still stirred by the sight of his daughter's unfettered movement. The lingering regret over their years apart had been supplanted by profound gratitude and a revitalized sense of purpose. He had judiciously leveraged his influence to guarantee the full financial backing and national acknowledgement of Jerome's pioneering program. As for Dr. Harrison, his descent was as precipitous as his own inflated self-importance. Dismissed for medical malpractice, he forfeited his professional license following an inquiry that unearthed further concerning cases. Currently, he labored as a salesperson for medical equipment, a poignant irony for an individual who once deemed himself beyond reproach. Dr. Jerome? Dr. Chun's voice preceded him as he approached, clutching a file. We have 5 additional cases of children whose prognoses were deemed irreversible by other physicians. Their parents have journeyed from distant states, having heard of our endeavors. Jerome accepted the file, his gaze alight with the same unyielding resolve he had exhibited on that initial day. We will offer assistance to all of them, Doctor, he stated firmly. It was at this juncture that Dr. Chun unveiled a revelation unearthed from Lily Williams' personal documents. Jerome, did you realize your grandmother meticulously documented her own techniques, developed over 3 decades? These methods were never officially recorded because she foresaw the traditional medical establishment's reluctance to embrace unconventional approaches. Jerome remained silent for a beat. She always maintained that true wisdom was transmitted from one heart to another, not merely from one book to another. Dr. Chun continued. This journal encompasses observations from over 200 instances of children she discreetly aided throughout the years. These were cases that physicians had abandoned. Yet, she achieved healing through compassion, perseverance, and insights gleaned from observing the children themselves. Dr. Foster joined the dialogue. Jerome, your grandmother did more than just save Emma. She bequeathed a legacy that will benefit thousands of children. At that very moment, Emma bounded towards Jerome, wrapping him in an embrace. Thank you for teaching me how to walk, brother, she whispered. Jerome returned the embrace, murmuring, Thank you for teaching me that often the most profound miracles arrive disguised as children whom the world too readily surrendered. Today, 3 years onward, the Lily Williams Center stands as a preeminent national authority in pediatric neural rehabilitation. Jerome, now 13, is immersed in advanced medical studies through a specialized program for gifted youths. Yet he remains steadfast in his commitment to assisting the children who frequent the center. Dr. Harrison persists in his struggle to salvage his professional standing, having discovered that reputations tarnished by hubris and prejudice are considerably more challenging to men than medical diagnoses. He not only lost his employment, but also the trust of an entire community that came to realize the extent of its misjudgment regarding the potency of truth channeled through a determined child. Emma Foster, now 11, is pursuing studies with the aspiration of becoming a pediatrician, driven by a desire to support children who, like her, were once categorized as lost causes. Jerome learned that the most effective rejoinder to prejudice is not fury or resentment, but rather the quiet triumph that reshapes lives and unequivocally demonstrates that greatness transcends distinctions of complexion, social standing, or age. He transformed the initial humiliation he endured into the driving force behind a movement that irrevocably altered the trajectories of countless families. The inscription adorning the entryway to the Lily Williams Center features a declaration personally selected by Jerome. Here, we hold that every miracle commences when an individual refuses to abandon a child. Dr. Chun consistently imparts this sentiment to all who will lend an ear. Jerome illuminated for us that genuine medicine originates not from framed diplomas, but from a heart that resolutely rejects the notion of any individual being a lost cause. Have you ever experienced being underestimated by someone who presumed to possess complete knowledge of your capabilities? Have you ever channeled perceived humiliation into the impetus to validate your inherent worth? Share your narrative of overcoming adversity in the comments section. Should this chronicle of bravery and resolve resonate with your spirit, kindly remember to subscribe to the channel for further accounts that affirm the principle that true fortitude recognizes no boundaries of age, race, or social background, and that occasionally the most valuable instructors arrive in the most unassuming guises.